Good morning, everyone. I am your host, David Millington, the Director of Education for Next Level Purchasing Association. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending today's webinar, Procurement and Blockchain, Machine Learning, and Virtual Reality. A very important topic as it relates to the procurement function and what is in store for procurement professionals as we go forward. So I would like to start with a quote from one of the articles that I wrote recently. If you go to our website, you will be able to see that article. And two very important points I would like to start off with. And that is systems, value streams are supply chains. So we have to think about our supply chains and our procurement function. The procurement function is an enabler of value, and value should move as a stream from the suppliers through our organizations as procurement professionals or the buying organizations to the end user, the customers. So there should be an unimpeded flow of value. So with that said, value streams are supply chains, and supply chains are systems that source inputs, that interact with data points, machines, processes, metrics, logistics functions, conversion processes or manufacturing processes, and people to develop and deliver useful products and services for our customers. Value streams and supply chains are also a mixture of value creating activities, non-value creating activities, but essential activities, and of course, unfortunately, wasteful activities that do not add value to the customer. A typical value stream consists of 10% value creating activities, about 30% non-value creating but essential activities, and about 60% wasteful activities or activities that add absolutely no value to the customer. All three activities can be mapped and quantified for time and dollar impact. So with that said, I just wanted us to begin with the end in mind and to focus on that for a minute. 10% of the activities on average in the average company add value to the end product. And the customer, meaning that the customer is willing to pay for that. There's a physical transformation from one stage to the next, and all activities are done correctly the first time. 30% are non-value creating activities, but they're essential, maybe for compliance reasons, maybe for tax reasons, etc. They don't add value to the end product, but they're essential, they're mandatory. And then 60% of the activities in a procurement function and in a supply chain, the collective set of activities in a supply chain, about 60% are what we call wasteful activities. So the strategic procurement professional's mandate, and I usually start off with the procurement mandate or the procurement professional's mandate or mission or purpose, is to understand, measure, and solve problems relating to managing spend, supporting operations, and protecting organizations from risk. So managing spend, supporting operations, and protecting our organizations from risk, that is the procurement function. That is the mandate, the purpose of the existence of a procurement function. But to be strategic, or the strategic procurement professional's mandate is to be aware and to embrace and to be ready to enable the digitization of the procurement function. As the procurement function is poised for, in the coming years, a massive digitization. And we have to ask ourselves, we have to reflect on the prior slide, how we started this webinar. Just think about 60% of non-value added waste in our activities and our processes, and think about the cost of that. Then think about the 30% non-value added activities, but essential activities. And as us as procurement professionals, how could we be creative? How could we lead the way in enabling the reduction and looking for cost reduction opportunities beyond price? Because many of us, we focus on price, but there are many ways for the procurement function to have a positive impact on the organizational bottom line outside of price. And we'll go deep into those dynamics as we go on in the webinar. So the scope of today's webinar, we will learn how blockchain, machine learning, and virtual reality could enhance the core procurement processes. You'll also learn how these three mechanisms, blockchain, machine learning, and virtual reality, could enhance collaboration and competitive advantage. And we'll also learn how these three technologies and mechanisms could help reduce supply chain risk factors. And then towards the end, or at the end, we will prepare the business case for realizing blockchain, machine learning, and virtual reality, and embracing those technologies in our procurement practice. So the traditional view of the procurement function is that it's cumbersome, fragmented, error-prone, reactive, and siloed. But we do save money, we do support our operations, and we do a great job at reducing risk. But we realize our mandates of managing spend, supporting operations, and reducing risk in a very cumbersome way, in a very fragmented way, in a way that a very error-prone and reactive in a siloed way. This is the typical perception of the procurement function, and it's very important that as procurement professionals, we are able to reflect on our activities, we're able to reflect on the effectiveness of our functions and our departments and our activities. And we ask the fundamental question, does it have to be like this? Does it have to be like that? So we get into what is blockchain. And I came up with three definitions on top. It's a decentralized public ledger. It's a recording platform for crypto transactions. It's maintained across a network of peer-to-peer computers. And how does blockchain work? The basic core functionality of the blockchain technology and mechanisms. For example, an organization or a person will pose a request to purchase something, a product or service, right? And this would be in support of operations. Then step two, the request goes to an interconnected network of computers or nodes. They're also called nodes. And this connectivity and interconnectivity could be very, very, very powerful in reducing cost and cycle time. So let's think about that. Step three, there's a verification of the transaction, and smart contracts and digital records could be leveraged. And this gives one of the most important and essential facets of procurement technology and the procurement function: visibility. As visibility across a supply chain, visibility as it relates to the procurement and the contracting and movement of raw material inputs, visibility is very important, as it helps enhance collaboration, and it helps to reduce fraudulent transactions. And then each transaction is considered a block and is deployed into a block of transactions or public ledger with a date stamp. Very, very important in case there's a need to do some type of audit or audit trail. Again, a very powerful deterrent from fraudulent activities in the procurement function. So there's tremendous value in that. And then there's a permanent record that is stored that is irreversible. Again, very important for fraud protection, which is part of risk mitigation. So just with the process flow and the dynamics of blockchain, again, this is a very, very simplified definition of the process flow. We see that all of the core elements of managing spend, cost reduction, fraud protection, or protecting the organizations from risk and supporting operations are enabled and facilitated. So with that said, the critical or the core benefits of the blockchain technology or methodology is that it helps to reduce the total cost of ownership. It helps to reduce fraud. It helps to reduce cycle time, increase collaboration, and increase visibility. These core benefits are all interconnected with a reduction in the total cost of ownership. So the total cost of ownership is one of the most critical and fundamental metrics in the procurement function. So wherever time could be saved and cycle times could be reduced, wherever the deterrent mechanisms to prevent fraud and theft, all of these help to reduce the total cost of ownership. So we have to view this with an open mind and look beyond the price. I think for this is going to be my mantra going forward. It's more than price. We have to look at the total cost of ownership. So machine learning, which leverages big data analytics, and big data is considered the new oil, and organizations going forward would compete to have effective, robust data mechanisms and data tracking and data analytics mechanisms going forward. So we have to look at organizations and in terms of these levels. Where are we? Are we an organization that has ability to reflect on data sets, to understand cause and effect mechanisms? Do we have advanced statistical models? Do we have advanced data stratification models? Do we have value stream mapping mechanisms? Where are we? Because these methodologies, they bring reflection on what's happening, the descriptive analytics, what's happening in our environment, a very, very powerful methodologies of understanding what's happening and to describe and to put forth analytical patterns as what's happening in our organizations. Are we there? Many organizations are not even on this bottom level. Many organizations, unfortunately, are in the mode of as we said upfront, fragmented, siloed ways of looking at the supply chain, where many organizations are in a realm of what I would say cumbersome procurement processes, very, very manual driven, fragmented procurement processes, and do not have the benefit of having robust, reflective analytics that could give foresight. So descriptive analytics are a very, which was at one point considered a very, very advanced way of looking at organizations and understanding supply chains and understanding the flows of people and materials in the supply chain and the procurement function itself. But we see with the rise of modern technologies that descriptive analytics are not enough to enable organizations to compete in the modern business landscape. So many organizations have moved to predictive models, analytical models, where they're able to predict based on current patterns to predict how our supply chain and how our procurement function would be impacted or would need to position itself to assure a steady supply of materials and a good balance of demand and supply dynamics. So you have descriptive, you have predictive analytics, which is a step up of the descriptive analytics. Then a next step up, which machines, either robots or with the rise of robotics and deep learning mechanisms or computerized systems, sensors, are able to prescribe solutions for our business operations, the supply chain mechanism, and the procurement function. So you have the prescriptive analytics, where very, very powerful and enhanced decision-making processes. And very few organizations are on the verge of what we call autonomous analytics, where I would consider this what we call the intelligent enterprise, where the machines and the systems in our environments, the technologies, are able to understand what's happening in the environment and to adapt to new situations. And all of this with very, very, very little human intervention. So the idea, the core mindset that we would want to embrace as procurement professionals is that if we reflect on the fact, as we mentioned before, that 60% of the activities in the supply chain are non-value added waste. And what I mean by that, unnecessary transportation, unnecessary inventories, unnecessary motion in the supply chain, overproduction, overprocessing, the defects or defective products and services, and the underutilization of skills. These are what we consider the 8 waste in supply chains, and the cost of this is staggering. So as procurement professionals, machine learning, the virtual reality, the concepts of machine learning, virtual reality, and blockchain could relieve us as procurement professionals of the very mundane, cumbersome activities related to sourcing, preparing purchase orders, preparing and approving requests for materials, writing contracts,